You're tuned in to the Stingbat Radio Network on FM 101.2 KRPG. Welcome to Dungeon Master Diaries. This is a podcast about Shadowdark and other role-playing games where two GMs talk about their recent experiences at the table and hopefully give you something useful that you can take to yours. On the show today, we discuss the Caves of Chaos. Hello there, sages and adventurers. My name is Matt, and with me, as always, is my good friend and GM colleague, Jody. How you doing?
I am doing well. Summer is upon us. Nothing hurts, and everything is better.
Amazing. A boundless RPG opportunity in front of us.
We shall be savoring, but first, let's look back.
Indeed, Jody. So today's episode focuses on the Caves of Chaos from the Keep on the Borderlands module, the universally, at least known about, it seems, module. So, Jody, you ran the Caves of Chaos, the dungeon that so many young D&D nerds cut their teeth on. Why don't you take us to the table?
We recently concluded, and I'd like to do a reading from the good book, if you will.
Maybe I'll put some music in here.
The Temple of Evil Chaos. This huge area has an arched ceiling some 30 feet or more in height. The floor is of polished black stone, which has a swirling pattern of red veins through it. The walls, behind the draperies, and the ceiling as well, are of a dull black rock, while the west wall is of a translucent red stone, which seemingly is all one piece. A great bell of black iron stands near the entrance point with a pair of mallets beside its support. To the south are several long benches or pews. There are 3 stone altars in the west, the northmost of pure black, the middle one of streaked red and black, and the last one with black flecks. At the western end of the temple is a dais of black stone with 4 lesser chairs. On its lower tier, a great throne above. The chairs are of bone. The ivory throne is set with gold and adorned with gems of red and black. The signs and sigils upon the seats are of pure chaos and evil. The other walls are covered by draperies of deep purple with embroidered symbols of evil sayings done in scarlet and golden black thread. As soon as the party enters this place, black candles in 8 great candelabras on either side of the place come magically alight, shooting forth a disgusting red radiance. Shapeless forms of purple, yellow, and green will dance and sway on the western wall. This is the Temple of Evil Chaos.
All right, Jody, that was both excellent and also genuinely interesting because I actually got to play through that room.
You did indeed.
So
well,
cool.
my version of it.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that. So we're not going to bury the lead. I want to get right from the get-go. This is a quasi-review of this module. Now, of course, we are focusing exclusively on the dungeon, the Caves of Chaos. We're not going to focus very much, if at all, about the eponymous keep. I just love to be able to use the word eponymous. So, Jody, do you recommend this dungeon for either veteran game masters who want to go back and run a piece of history, or new game masters who are new to Shadowdark and want a place to, like so many, cut their teeth and learn what the old school gaming situation was like?
No. Full stop. Let me expand on that. Otherwise, that's a very short episode.
End of episode.
Yeah, no.
Let's roll the credits.
No, I don't actually. The one spot I will go. So if you do want to do this thing, one, if you're interested in running Keep on the Borderlands as a whole and as a campaign kickoff, I do recommend it for that. For all of the purposes, whether it's the old school, the nostalgia, the porting it out over to Shadowdark and wanting to experience that mechanical shift of Shadowdark to an old module, do the whole thing. just looking at the Caves of Chaos, the only reason I would recommend it is the reason I did it is for the nostalgia hit. And as it turned out, sharing this experience with a bunch of people who'd never had it and were, to some degree, excited for, hey, I've been through the Caves of Chaos. In terms of an actual dungeon, there are pros and cons. I don't want to be negative throughout the whole thing. But for me, there's a lot better spots you can go than, unfortunately, this one. And a little bit of, again, don't want to bury the lead and just jump to it. I was frankly a little disappointed. The more I ran it, the more my oh man, and all the problems it has, it just never stops having.
So let's focus on the positive though, because I think there are things you enjoyed and there are things
Absolutely.
that the players enjoyed, and I think so. From your perspective, so nostalgia drew you to this. Was it successful in eliciting the kinds of nostalgia that you wanted, or at the very least, let's kind of focus in on some of the positives around getting back in touch with this early version of the game. This is the basic set module. It's the module that so many people saw when they opened up that red box.
Right. It's widely held as, and I'm assuming it is still true. I don't know though, because modern world and more people and whatnot, of the most commonly read module and run game, period. This is it. There's some debate over Lost Mines maybe now is it. And in time, hopefully the Scarlet Minotaur will be as well. But, so yes, if for nothing else, going into those caves, going to the valley where the caves are buried in, and folks, if you don't want Caves of Chaos spoilers, catch us on the next one, because I don't know how to talk about this without spoiling. Yeah. Also, it's been 50 years. I think the statute has run out on the spoiler limit.
A lot of our players would have been spoiled.
No kidding. I was shocked at that. So maybe we're so far that it's what's old is new again. And it does those things. It also, from a historical artifact point of view, is fascinating. If you enjoy RPG history, there are some things that become really apparent as you're playing through this module and this dungeon that just start screaming oh, this is a product of its time. Oh, this is a product of its time. And like so many hobbies, games, and life, as time passes, we learn new and better ways to do things. And there are better ways to do things. So that is its high level takeaway is it is this cornerstone of the hobby. It is a wonderful introduction. And if you do want to use this as an introduction, any one of the Caves of Chaos would make a lovely place to start.
So let's talk about what the Caves of Chaos actually are as an quote-unquote ecology, which I think is actually kind of edging into some of the issues. But I don't know. I'm just from an outsider's perspective and having looked over this module a couple times. But give me a sense of what is the Caves of Chaos for folks who don't know, and then what exactly, when you say you can use one of these caves as an introductory scenario or dungeon, is there one that kind of stands out as being the best?
That's a good one. So I'm glad I got some stuff to talk through before that. The Caves of Chaos themselves are set north of the, as Matt said, eponymous keep on the Borderlands, and you travel up there and you find yourself in a western-facing valley. You're at the floor of the valley, and stretching to the west are the sides of the valley wrapping around you to the far end of the valley. There, along the walls, looking up, which is one of the first critiques I have actually, is a series of cave mouths. Now, in old school D&D lore, and even modern, as you descend into the dungeon gets harder and harder. Not so for the Caves of Chaos. The floor level are much easier monsters, and as you ascend the walls and go up the valley, the monsters get harder and harder. Even within the dungeon, if you find a stairwell and you go up, it's gonna get worse. More on that later, because that is the single biggest problem. But that piece being backwards is a trick. The term that got coined by the Caves of Chaos is the Monster Zoo. Are you familiar with this one, the Monster Zoo?
A little bit. It's just kind of the grab bag of like, well, let's put some kobolds in here. Right. Why? Well, because kobolds are low-level monsters, and they are definitely there.
Yeah. So as you enter the valley, on your left, on the floor of the valley, is the first cave that you are closest to, and there are goblins there. There are large outcroppings of trees speckling the base of the valley, and not too far ahead of that, on your right side, the northern end of the valley, there are kobolds there. And if you go up the sides of the walls from each of those, you end up at orcs above the kobolds, which is okay. And then above the goblins, you'll end up at hobgoblins, which there's some natural like, oh, okay, that now in our modern sense of like goblin, hobgoblin, somehow bugbear, they're all kind of related-ish goblinoids sort of thing. There's some story you can build in there. That story is buried in a lack of design because it's new. This is not a ding. Like, I don't ding it for being poorly laid out because there was no other example. Like, this is the first draft of somebody doing this. So there were very few other examples. So the fact that the layout, just in layout alone, if you go out into the internet, you can find a like pocket zine, the 1-page piece of paper that folds down into an 8-page zine. The entire dungeon is out there in that format. And it's really useful. It's very fine print, but somebody retyped, here's just the things you need to know, and it fits on one piece of paper folded into a 8-page zine fold. What dungeon would be the best? And then as you continue in, there are gnolls, and then there's as I read at the top, the Cave of Chaos. There's also a Minotaur's cave. There's an owlbear in there. You got bugbears. They're hanging out with the orcs, and like,
why not?
So it's this ecology, if you will, and this zoo of like, wait, so this one valley has this series of a bunch of caves, and there's different stuff in every cave, which is actually a strength of it. If you can get over the why does all this stuff live near each other and not kill each other, and are they all friends? Notes, they're not friends, and that's the only thing that makes the whole stinking thing work is they don't all get along. If you can get past that, it's the variety is really nice. It's actually nice to be like, oh, well, we can go fight orc. Oh, we can go fight kobolds. We can go fight goblin. We can fight a minotaur where there's stingbats in one of the caves. There's, you get to have all these fun experiences as you work through the dungeon. And as a GM, you get to craft how, if you want to, and this is what I leaned into that I enjoyed, was how do each of these kind of groups fight differently? How do they set up their dungeons differently? Now, I do want to be clear. I didn't run every single dungeon. My players never went to the bugbears or the gnoll caves. They were drawn into the cave of evil chaos at the far back because it's one of the only caves that, frankly, has any landmark to it. The rest of them are just caves, and the evil chaos cave has a big set of shrines out front that screams, buy your chaos here. So I didn't see the bugbears, and I didn't see the gnolls. The cave that I think is probably the best cave, the Goblin Cave network on the southern edge that ties into the hobgoblins, and there's an ogre cave that's in there that's kind of fun. Those are all tied together in a really satisfying ecology way. You could pluck that 3-entrance dungeon and use it, and it is by itself a really enjoyable 2 or 3 session adventure. And you don't need the rest of the Caves of Chaos. I think that is my favorite part. The other cave that's really interesting, it also screams the problem with almost every cave. The orc caves are interesting because it's 2 orc clans in 2 nearby caves with a secret connection in between where the orc leaders meet and keep the peace between the 2 clans. And if you get into that whole thing, which is interesting that plays into the like become friends with the monsters. And that is a very Shadow Darky kind of thing of like, we're going to make an alliance with these guys. The problem is you're, a few hundred yards, if that, you're not even that much away from the kobold cave when you're in an orc cave entrance. So you're like right on top of them. And there's no description that they're all friends and hanging out. And so the relationshipy monster zoo thing falls apart really fast. That go to this one spot and there's always monsters to fight there. But the ecology piece is fun. And the 2 big monsters, those dungeons are also great, but not great for starting because fighting an owlbear or a minotaur as your first scenario, especially in a literally maze, a minotaur in a maze. We talked about that a while ago. That would not be a fun spot to start with a new party because they would just get lost and should get slaughtered unless you're immediately pulling punches. So,
yeah. So I've actually run some of the Caves of Chaos. I honestly truly do not remember. It was years ago. I ran it as a setting in a game I was running, in a duet game that I was running for my sister online. And what I remember from it was, what I remember primarily was being confused. And your description tracks, like this monster zoo, like how are all these things interconnected? But the other thing that I noticed was that it's not very big. Like, you have this sense, I think, as a player, that these cave mouths are going to be bigger than like 2 or 3 rooms. And many of them are, but there are quite a few long corridors that that offer that like illusion of choice, where unless you're really highly telegraphing and you're giving your players lots of clues about what's to the north, what's to the south, like whatever, there's a lot of, like, even just in choosing a cave, it's a lot of just, for me, when I was running it, and I think sometimes for players, is like, all right, let's just go choose a cave. Yeah. Was that your experience?
And I did a lot of work on building rumor tables to say, well, who's in these caves and what are they doing and what are they up to? And
did you use the rumor table?
No. No. Oh my God. All right. So there's a rumor table in the beginning of the module, and like a third of the rumors are false, which is, again,
there's one that's really famous though, right? It's like,
the one that tells you to go find the hermit, who's like the opposite direction off the map.
Well, isn't there one that is the goblin word for
the goblin word for friend is Briark, and it means like charge or something. Yeah. And it's like, it literally it will start a fight, not like avoid one. It's like
the ultimate adversarial table. I find, let me just shoehorn a piece in. I don't like false rumors. Like, I hate them. I love a partially true rumor. Yes. I love a partially true rumor. In fact, almost every rumor I try and give out has some amount of it that's like not quite true. But like, I hate nothing more than, as a player or a GM, like giving a party a rumor and it just being flatly wrong. It is the easiest way to just like destroy a session and destroy the mood. I don't know.
No, as your players latch on and like keep trying to figure out why this rumor was there, and you're like, no, it's a lie. But yeah,
I'm not going to tell you. Like, do I tell you that you? It's like,
I got you. The imperfect information you got was wrong. Like,
the hermit is in a different castle. Yeah. Anyways, continue.
Well, the issue is that, yes, the dungeons are relatively small, unless you consider, but the dungeons are connected. Well, I mentioned those orcs earlier, right? And you got 2 orcs, and the orc chieftains talk to each other via multiple secret doors in a secret chamber connecting the 2. So if you don't find those secret doors, you never find the connection.
Are they easy to find? Like, do they have a tell?
Often there will be like, oh, there's a tapestry or something. If they're there after you kill the chieftain and loot the room, then you can get to it.
And so you have to make it all the way through the dungeon.
Right. You have to get to the chieftain, get past him. I did a little quick note-taking before we started recording, which we almost never do. Listeners, you may or not be like, yeah, obviously. There are, as best I can tell, there is only one pair of dungeons that are connected by a door, like a normal door. Every other connection between dungeons is behind a secret door. So the only way to go, like, kind of modern thinking is, oh, well, if I fight through these lower dungeons, I can find a back way into the other dungeons, and then see Jaquang or Alexandring or whatever version of it you like. There's multiple entrances, and I can be clever and discover these. They're there, except they're almost all hidden behind secret doors if there is an interaction, and there is very rarely an interaction. There's only like... it gets into some noodly that's not great for radio description, but most caves will have a secret door somewhere in them that will take you into a different kind of monster's cavern network. And that's almost always what happens. I found this secret door, not now I go found treasure. I found this awesome way to...
Oh.
I get to now get into fighting the gnolls, or I can go fight the other or I went through the secret door and now I get to fight the other orc chieftain who's sitting here waiting. Like, wub. This is I'm gonna jump to it.
Yeah.
My biggest critique is this. And this is really the deal breaker for me on the whole thing. I like the Monster Zoo, believe it or not, because if you are willing to do it and you leverage what's already there in the module, you can build a story about what's going on. And that's what I did, was this evil shrine of chaos is there. That's why all the monsters are here. They've been drawn to this evil chaos ritual. We're building up to the chaos temple is doing this big ritual, and you need to go stop it. That's how we concluded in our last session. They have a leverage and alliance with the gnolls because gnolls are classically like the most chaotic of chaotics. The other kind of goblinoids are like, oh man, these guys suck, and let's like stay away, but also we don't want to go to fight the gnolls. As one of my players called it, the Mason-Dixon Lion of the Valley is the Minotaur who has an alliance with the bugbears, and then just this random owlbear that's just chilling in the middle of all of it.
Yeah, the random owlbear really is just hilarious.
It's great, and it's like you can have them walk out and eat somebody. It'll be fun. So
I feel like that's why it's there, just to walk out and just eat a PC.
Yeah, well, it's we need to find tracks. And I kept luring about like, there's bear tracks. And eventually they were like, let's follow the bear tracks. And, oh my God, it's an owlbear. And it was great. It was a good time. All of that, I actually like all of that. It's zany in an old school way. It has that like, man, there's just stuff everywhere. And like we find random things and it's weird. And the secret door thing is annoying because it isolates every dungeon, but it's get buyable. Here's what's not get buyable. Almost every single dungeon is conceptually not the map, but if you laid out, so the dungeon entrance, what do? Okay, once we explore the dungeon, what are the things we're seeing? Great. What's the end of the dungeon? It's the same in every dungeon. The entrance is guarded by a set of guards with some very trivial quirk. You will fight the guards. That's how you get in. You fight through the guards. You could lure them out. You could trick them. You could trap them. You could lure them. You could burn them. You must kill the guards to get in. You then go explore the dungeon and you find the monsters' living quarters and their young and their families. Bummer.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that one's like, I take that out of my games. And that's a me. If somebody is like, oh, I love that, because you get to meet the orc family and they're over here and there's 4 families of orcs and there's Grunk, Merc, and Ziggle, and Grunk and Merc get along, but Ziggle, man, he's weird because his name starts with a Z and he's on the outside, and that's the family dynamics in the orc tribe. Woo. If you're into that, it's here for you, man. That's not my jam. I'm like, orcs like to stab you. That seems fun. I like orcs that stab you. And then there's a boss, and then you go to the next dungeon and you fight the guards, and then you go kill their babies, and then you go kill the overlord, and then you go to the next dungeon. Guess what the layout is?
Yeah.
And it's that. Every dungeon, except the Cave of Chaos, which is different, but every dungeon is that.
Yeah, so, okay. I got a couple of follow-ups on this, because, first of all, did anyone try and make any alliances with any of these factions? And I guess a follow-up question to that, or kind of an addendum to that, would be like, would that have been successful? Because I know you have a pretty particular way of interpreting and running chaotic monsters, right? That they are born of chaotic energy and don't really want to be friends with you, but I'll throw it out there. So, like, did you throw a reaction roll at it, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes. So, funny enough, in the Goblin Caves, if I'm remembering correctly, might be the Hobgoblin Caves. This was quite a while back in doing this on our Sunday sessions where you have open tables and players show in, so I don't remember. Hobgoblins. We're going to say hobgoblins. We're going with it. Final answer. There is a room of prisoners, and you free the room of prisoners, and they'd had a rumor of like there were nobles from the town, and if you can go save them, you get a reward, which I think is in the module. And they did so. And in with them is a gnoll who is just really interested in eating you and is just terrible and evil and chaos and bad because gnolls. So that stayed true. Also, nobody happened to speak gnoll. But there was an orc in there as well. And the orc was like, dude, I'm captured. These hobgoblins are going to kill me. Somebody speaks orc. I'd like to leave. Let's make a deal. And the deal they made was, hey, this is how you get past the guards in that orc cave. There's a way to get by them. They have a trap. Here's how you get by it. I'm in the other cave. Cools. Here's how we get out. led them out. They got out because they actually did use the one back door, which was great. And so he led them out, got them out. They went their separate ways. They never came back on that. The party literally never went to the orc caves. Nobody, no party group. And this was a persistent, like, hey, you've been told this thing. So nobody leveraged that. And that may have been like, I was not overt about like, you can go become homies with the orcs. Yeah. I wouldn't have shut it down if somebody was like, I speak orc. I'm going to go talk to the orcs. I got a +3 charisma and I'm a bard and I can sing orcish metal. And let's do that. I'm not going to say no. Yeah. So no, it never came up and unfortunately never even got to explore that. Funny enough, in Shadow Dark, I said it before and I really do. I think if you were going to Shadow Dark run the Caves of Chaos, and if I were to ever do it again, there's so many other things I'd like to run, and not even as a knock, just I'm like, it's just a mountain of other things I'd like to get to than revisit. Yeah. 7 different caves that I've seen before that just geographically aren't super interesting. But if I did, I think you almost have to leverage that, and it strains suspension of disbelief that, 50, 60 feet away from your front door is a different tribe that you might not get along with, of different critters. But the Mason-Dixon line of the Minotaur and the owlbear, like, not being gnarly enough that the gnolls and the chaos cultists don't go mess with the bugbears and the orcs, and vice versa. Like, I was like, it works. It's a good enough story to keep this thing held together. The hobgoblins are tough enough to keep the gnolls at bay because they have all these weapons and stuff they've harnessed, and you can cobble an ecology together that makes the space make sense. It will never fix the problem that when you go in the dungeon, you kill the guards, you go kill their children, and then you kill their leader, and that's what you do. Like that. That's why I said that's the, like, God dang it. Like, there's no getting around it.
So I want to talk about this from the player's perspective. So first of all, how's the treasure, right? And then second of all, perhaps more importantly, or maybe not importantly, but more specifically, do you feel like the players who you ran for enjoyed the experience? Because we've all had that situation where we're not loving a module, but the players are enjoying it. And from my perspective, it seemed like people enjoyed playing through this piece of history to a pretty large degree.
I think so. And I mean, I don't know that I directly asked. I think when we finished, it was the right time, or maybe one session passed, which is a forgivable sin of like one too long is fine. It was ready to be done. I think everybody was ready to be done messing with the caves. There had been some bad runs where people lost characters that we wished we hadn't lost, and things got away from them. And so I think when we wrapped up, it was the right time to wrap up and say, we've seen the caves. Okay, we're good. And I think the first few sessions were really a hoot. I think the Goblin Cave that ties into the whole hobgoblins with the ogre, can't say enough good things about it. On one of our episodes, we talked about the Kobold Cave, which is really not great with Shadow Dark kobolds. It just becomes a grind. It's really, I don't know. I'd almost need to fully re-envision what that cave is, just because of the crossover. So I think folks had a generally good time. I think the nostalgia carried through because our Sunday sessions are go to the place, get the loot, get out. I think there was it does that well. You asked, there's plenty of loot to be had. So remember the 3 different groups of things you're going to interact with I mentioned? Guess which one of the 3, the guards, the children, or the leader, has the loot?
Oh, Jody going to say the leader.
It's a gold star. Wow. It was a 3-sided coin, and it flipped right for you. There it was. Yeah. So guess where the loot is? Well, go find the leader. And I don't know that players were processing it that way. And I took the children out. I don't do that. I'm not interested in that.
Yeah, that's not my jam either. That's in situations like this.
That's an old schooly thing of like, I appreciate the believability of that. It's implying I get it, but at the end
it's just a huge poster for murder hoboism. Apply here.
Yeah,
like for me,
we're the good guys.
I mean, if there's one thing I just hate doing at the table, it's like, it's doing the dance of getting out of a situation where someone has created murder hoboism, and I don't need the dungeon to offer up an opportunity for people to do that, because even the most well-meaning players will do that on occasion, and it's annoying, and not what either of us are looking for.
So, I mean, I will own... I took that out. I just took it out.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay, so what did you replace it with?
Just mooks. Just generic monsters are in there, and they're hanging out and they're eating. Like, it's still a family living room. It's where the goblins that spring from the earth and do not have children and wives and families and 401ks to worry about.
Sure.
That part is not. They still got to eat somewhere and poop somewhere. In fact, one of my favorite parts, to highlight again, the Goblin Cave, there's a poop room. There's a room that isn't described in the map. It's got no number, but where it's located, I'm like, that's for taking a dump. That's where they go poop. And that's how I described it. And then I put a slime in there, and it was awesome.
Oh, dude,
you played in that session.
I did play in that session. Yeah. Oh, I was just, hence my small bit of silence there as I was going, oh, I think I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
the treasure's good.
Yeah, and as far as the treasure is concerned, and I had a problem with Barrow Maze. We've talked about many times that the treasure in the Barrow Maze is just of this like wildly kind of it varies wildly in terms of power level, and I didn't do a good job of converting it. Was there any issue converting the power level of the treasure, or is it just like kind of boring treasure? You know, it's just like you get a +1 sword and that's it. Good job, you have a long sword now. It does a little bit more damage and it hits slightly more frequently.
That one, and so many coins and so many different kinds of coins, and gems, and it's you find money most of the time. You were just getting the money because money's XP back then and in Shadowdark. I think, you know, in terms of mechanics, because I see this question online all the time, you and I both went the just drop a 0. So I just dropped a 0 off of if it's 1,000 gold coins, it's 100 gold coins, and treat it that way. You know, and it is worth noting, Matt and I were using some home rules for how we were awarding XP. It was your current level times 100 will get you to the next level.
And we gave away XP for in the exact amount of gold pieces that you brought back.
Right. So in that old school tradition of a gold piece is an experience point and back and forth, we went with that. In hindsight, I think both of us have found like it's not a great port. Use the Shadowdark XP system or something else that rivals that.
One little note here, and I'll add this to the show notes. In understanding more the gold piece conversion, the kind of kludge of just dropping a 0 is actually not an accurate. And I think we realized this, you know, a while ago, probably more than a year ago, and we just kind of were like, screw it, we'll just adjust the way that we run, and we'll just work with it, right? Like, it's not a huge deal, but the actual conversions are not necessarily more challenging math per se, but they do require a little bit more thought and a little bit more conversion. And man, that's actually one of the things I like the Shadowdark XP system. I think it works great. When we first started, I still think that gold for XP is a good system for a particular kind of game, and I still think you can do it the way that we did it. The conversions need to be more accurate because otherwise things get real screwy real fast, and we both had to dial way back the amount of gold and treasure we were giving out, which created a weird arc in terms of like leveling. Like, characters got to level 4 and 5 pretty quick, and then we artificially kind of smoothed over that curve, and it took a long time for characters to get all the way to, you know, level 8, I think, and then died. But you know, it happens.
It does.
So okay. So moving from player experience, what, you know, you identified a couple of caves that you thought were cool. What did you enjoy the most? Like, were there particular sessions or particular things that you enjoyed about this module that maybe people who the stuff that you cited as maybe things you didn't like are things that they're totally fine with or actually positives? Highlight for me what is one or maybe, you know, multiple things that you enjoyed.
Yeah, so the Goblin Cave, again, I mean, I'm harping on it, but it is just in terms of layout so much better than the other caves. It's just more interesting. There's more going on. There's different routes. It's the Goblin and Hobgoblin Caves. 10 out of 10 was fun to run in those. I was actually sad the players never really dug into the hobgoblin cave. They didn't go kill the boss or go visit the laundry room. So, that was a thing. The fights with the owlbear and the minotaur were super enjoyable. The minotaur in a maze, and then I did use the Dungeon Craft Professor Dungeon Master. He has a whole video about changing it. I still stayed with a minotaur. I didn't need to turn it into some weird butcher mutant guy, but the disorienting fungus thing he does in that, I used something like that because actually physically mapping a maze dungeon is tedious and terrible.
Oof.
And it relies on you literally giving the players misinformation, which again, Matt and I both have said, not fans of just flat telling people misinformation at the table in a game where the whole dynamic is my job is to give them information to act on. Not a great precedent. And lastly, the both runs in the Evil Temple of Chaos were super fun. The one that ended, all three, we went there 3 times. So the first one ended very tragically with multiple character deaths and somebody being falling behind in the dark as they tried to escape. There was a rescue mission to go get them that was really enjoyable. It was successful. They went and dug the priest out, who later met their demise in the Barrow Maze. And then we had just recently, we had our final run and we took a full party and we all level 4s, because I capped at level 4s. That is another thing is, man, a fireball.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, a fireball solves most of the problems in the dungeon.
Well, okay, so I want to talk about 2 things. First of all, I do want to get to this last session, the wrap-up session, because it's super fun. I played in it, and I think we had 6 players at the table, so it's a big table and great session. But first, I want to talk about this level cap. You put a specific hard level cap, like level 4 was the max level.
Right.
And talk to me about, like, because I think the response to this is like, well, just make it so that Fireball can't solve all your problems, right? Like that, that's, or some derivation of. Why is it that once you hit level 5 in Shadow Dark that the challenges become trivial? Because I actually am interested in the answer to this question, because like I don't know.
First and foremost, I don't like, and this is all over the place in old modules, where it just says, hey, player, wizard in particular, you can't do X. Or you'll run into something with a thief of like, hey, that glassy wall, you can't climb it. I have one ability in an old school setting. Yeah, you can't do it. That's maximum not fun. The other issue is, and I love this about Shadow Dark, with roll to cast, you can cast it as many times as you want until you fail. And because we do have luck tokens pretty plentiful at the table, they're there, and there's healing potions. And by the time, or healing spells, because of the ability to cast and recast, those spells outpower level the monsters very quickly, and they become one shot, one kill. So we just walk up, we sneak the wizard up to the room, they cast the spell into the room, room's cleared, because the rooms aren't very big. So the answer to solve the problem would be like, well, make the rooms bigger. Okay, now I'm redrawing the map. Well, give them magic resistance. Well, now I have to go through and figure out some MacGuffin-y reason they can't. Instead of just saying, by the time you hit 5th level, you're realizing the treasure isn't good enough to get you by in here, which for the most part does play out to be true. You're not finding spell books. You're not finding scrolls. You're not finding cool bespoke magic items like are in the Barrow Maze. You're finding, pretty mundane stuff and piles of coins. And at some point I just said, once you're 5th level, you're like, man, there's better loot to be had. I'm going to get out of here. And I actually liked, from a mechanic standpoint of us running the tandem table, that there was a, like, I have a new character, I have a new person, go play over here. I have a veteran character, they go play over here. That
it did kind of organically turn into that.
The ski analogy, right? That there's different markers, and it's like, hey, you're a new adventurer, go over there and get it figured out. And once you're good, you can go try the Black Diamond. Like, you can start there with both of your hit points. Good luck, you'll need it.
People did, but to varying degrees of success. So let's talk about the final session, right? Final session, Jody, give me a picture of, you read the description of the room.
The big pentultimate room, yeah.
Yeah. What exactly, how did you envision this session? Because, okay, so let me, I'll frame it from a player's perspective. From a player's perspective, we know there's a ritual happening, and we have to stop the ritual before some horrible thing is is unleashed, some horrible demonic entity. Great. Love it. Very easy to understand as a player. We faffed about a bit, but it's inside of this dungeon. There were players at the table whose characters and or the player had already been to that dungeon. So talk to me about how'd you set it up? What decisions did you make about, making sure that we got about a 5-hour session, making sure that this was basically a one-shot to end the Caves of Chaos campaign. What choices did you make? How'd you set it up? And how did you deviate from what's in the book?
Let me see where to start this. So the first thing was honoring those old runs. That was important to me, that the old runs that had come in, that I wanted, frankly, the players, even if not their characters, because we didn't have many returning characters in that final group.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So I wanted the players to at least see the imprint they'd had. And it was convenient because you guys went south in that cave, and that had been really thoroughly cleaned out by the very first run. And so it was fun to go, oh, this spot where you guys stashed some loot that they never made it back to, oh, it's there. And then found out that it had been trapped in case somebody came back. And it was fun watching the players kind of interact with this spot where loot had been hidden in the cave-in part of the cave, if you know that area. Also, there was a zombie room, and you guys fought through the buildup of zombies, but then also the room was all burned out because they'd thrown a bunch of oil in there last time. There was a room with chairs, and there had been alcoves that there was a bunch of skeletons they killed. Well, the skeletons were gone because they shattered the skeletons and stole the gems that were in these chairs in this room. So I went, so what's in there instead? Oh, they've put just these spectral, these specters, basically, these ghosts are in there now hiding in the shadow, that if you go and start messing with stuff, basically the evil cult, because they're humans and they're reasonably intelligent, just trapped the crap out of that end of the dungeon and went, hey, if they come back for their stuff, they're just going to get whammied. So you guys fought through all of that. And then you headed north, and I really didn't change much of anything except around the penultimate room. In that way, you could just move that way through the dungeon and lead to that point. It is possible, had you gone in and been like, the players said, we've been here before, and huge credit to the one player who was like, I definitely know where we should be going, but my character wouldn't. And generally, I think commented on it once and then just was like, I'm just not going to tell people which direction to go. And that's a hard thing to do when you're on a timer. More on that in a minute. And your party's faffing about, as you put it, looking for the loot, of which there wasn't much. So that northernmost room, I kind of built the whole thing out from there. So it mentions the bell. I actually made the bell the whole center point of the room, that it's this giant black bell. I made a little miniature for it and put some cultists on top of it. And I had a 12-round timer going that was its own independent timer, that when the crawling clock went by, that clock would tick down and tick down and tick down. So you guys would be seeing, okay, if this thing gets to 0, the ritual's done. They've finished the ritual. And then I had some quick mechanics I'd written up of, once you get to the room, how does that interaction work? And what happens if you stop the ritual? Because the hope on my part was you'd succeed and you'd stop the ritual, but going, you kill the cultist and they don't do the ritual. High five. We're all done. I was like, that's not a big finale. That's not how that works.
Right.
So the ritual goes wrong. Well, what happens when rituals go wrong? You get not the demon you asked for. It's not the demon we wanted.
Teacher demon.
Yeah, that's right. And you got the least gnarly version. You were in the mid tier of demon.
Yeah,
and the top tier one was horrible. You all would have died. And I was very clear about that, of like, you don't want that. Don't go there.
No. Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. So the other thing I want to point out, and I actually, God, there's so many things I want to talk about, Jody, and we only have so many time on each of these episodes, and it's a real travesty. But I want to talk. I played a roustabout in this session, and I think that the roustabout has been unjustly maligned, because I had a great time, and my character was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Actually ended up being very useful. And because there wasn't going to be very much role playing in terms of the Noah guy, you allowed me one flashback mechanic, kind of like, oh, I knew a guy in town and he would like, do this favor for me. And so that was very fun. But two things. First of all, as a player, the mechanics that you had set up, very transparent. Love them. Love the use of the crawling clock. We're always using the crawling. We've now taken the crawling clock, and now we're doing all these crazy things with it. And you are in particular doing the travel thing. You're doing this. You're going crazy with the crawling clock.
I'm addicted. It becomes the thing of like, I like this. It's my only answer.
Yeah, we might
be a pull-up moment.
We might come back and do like a crawling clock revisited, because I think there's actually there's lots of questions about it, and people seem to enjoy the idea of it. But we should do a little revisited version. But here is my kind of second point. My second point is, and I don't know how to explain this, that I think that you're 2 for 2 on providing high quality, long form encounters. Right? We talked about the one with the crocodile. It's great. I was a player in that. We talked about this. We're now talking about this one. I was a player in this. I think this one was a much more difficult high wire act because you had 6 characters. You didn't know you were going to have 6 characters necessarily. And I just want to know, like, how was it running a combat on your side of the table for 6 characters that had a lot of moving parts and that had, frankly, like, the stakes were reasonably high. There were players who really wanted to, like, avenge.
Yeah, that was super fun.
And so, you want it to be stressful and you want it to be challenging, but you've got 6 players, and so you don't usually run for that many people.
No, my sweet spot continues to be 3 to 4 is my favorite. The number is going up. The longer I run Shadow Dark, the number is going up. Funny enough.
Yeah,
and it's because of this question of the mechanical nature of the things I had to keep track of was my limit. I felt myself back at, I'm not taking a dig. It's going to sound like it, but back at running 5e monsters, because there's so many moving parts to keep track of if you have 4 or 5 different kinds of monsters. In this encounter, I had 1, 2, 3, 4 different monster types, plus the bell mechanic to keep track of.
Yeah, a lair action, if you will.
Right, and it was very much that. Plus 6 different characters all running around doing craziness, plus light mechanics, plus setting mechanics. So there were some layers, and it was as much as I'm comfortable with. But again, Shadow Dark's so good about just whipping around the table that we can get through things. You also asked about the level cap, and I forgot this is a big one. This particular room, there is a side room to the evil temple. There are 2 doors on the eastern wall. And what's in those 2 doors is a collection of undead that they have ready to release as guards. That if somebody busts into the temple, they open the doors and out comes my children. And zombies and skeletons just come flooding out. It works really well, but a priest of, frankly, too high of a level would also make that a very trivial aspect. It's frankly where the whole thing went wrong for the first group is their priest failed turn undead. And now there is literally 20 undead monsters streaming out. But then you spike the doors and excellent things begin happening because they have acknowledged, oh, this is a lot of undead. We should do something. Again, what would be the answer? A fireball. So it was, thank you for the compliment on having recently run, compared to when I ran the crocodile adventure, there were some pieces of like, okay, interactable environment. How do I protect the BBEG, also the cult leader? That became a concern of like, I need enough going on that you can't just run up and group tag him. And for which I do want to shout out, we very rarely, we don't do sponsor stuff like we have our sponsors who we love and appreciate, and cannot wait.
No, we're talking about Jody. We do sponsored content we're about to do a sponsor momentarily.
Outside of the Shadow Dark, for this mortal realm, we are loath. But Michael Putlick of Night Noons Games, creating and adapting monsters for use in Shadow Dark RPG with mini bestiary. Buddy, what a name. His timing of delivery on his Kickstarter could not have been better.
Unbelievable.
Because in there, if you go into the bestiary, you will find a stat line on page 28, if you happen to have said tome, for the cultist fanatic, who is a level 4 cultist. Hey, you know what would make a great leader for a group of cultists? A cult fanatic. So you get a cult fanatic, you slap some magic items in his hands, and this dude's awesome, and he's got enough hit points to take an arrow or two. And part of the design on this thing was I wanted him to die, because then the ritual goes wrong, and I get to roll on the table to see what happens on the ritual rolling wrong. And so I was excited for him to die, but he's powers in it, and I don't want to give it all away, but some of his enhanced abilities are real son of a guns. Dude, the party now has problems to deal with because of this guy, and he was great. So that was
you
super
and I have
clutch.
both leveraged this stat block.
It's great.
I leveraged it. Oh gosh, I can't even remember when. I think it was maybe in the last Barrow Maze game. I don't remember, but there's an episode in our future about this. I have been using that particular supplement to design some set piece encounters for our kind of Dolmenwood finale that's coming up as of the time we're recording, a couple days. But what I think is so great about that particular zine and that particular third party publication is that, I mean, that stat block alone would be worth the price of admission, which is, I think, on itch.io free, which is outstanding. But the ideas in there for additional monsters, it really is a supplement that I can't recommend enough. And I think both you and I have actually been actively using it and referencing it in a way that, we buy a lot of stuff for RPGs, and a lot of it, you don't necessarily use random tables very much, but for whatever reason, this particular supplement has found a place on our prep tables, and it is useful to both of us, even though we run different styles of games. So
10 out of 10. I look forward to talking about it more. And again, it was super timely. Buried in all of this rambling about the cult room and the bell and the whole thing, you asked about how much did I change? If you were to mentally compare the description I read at the top of the episode to what I actually had on table in miniature, is close, but it was also stripped down quite a bit because there's too many stinking elements in there and they don't do anything. So I took the magic items that the cult leader does have. I put them on our cult leader for our cult fanatic. Thank you again, Michael. And I put them in his hands and let him use them as one does. Other than that, just the layout of the room is such that it's pretty leverageable, that you have this big central bell, you've got flanked immediately by undead, you have a group of cultists, and cultists are a great low-level monster because when they hit, it really gets people's attention. When you're, relatively high-level, well-armored fighter is I got an 18 AC, I'm fine. And they roll up, they go, an 11. Okay, here's 2d4 damage. And they're like, no, I have an 18 AC. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care. It's a spell. Eat it. Oh, yeah, you take 8 damage. Oh, that, okay.
I don't like that.
I don't like that. And the fighter's suddenly like, wait a minute. I have all this armor, though. Yeah, they don't care.
They really don't.
And we had some awesome stuff of the barbarian class that we've been trying out in our own homebrew.
Yeah.
Did the cool jump off the top of the bell. Our halfling rogue was weaving in and out of curtains and sniping people with his crossbow. And the crossbow rules about can't move, came in.
The loading rules became a thing.
The priest was doing work with those turn undeads because that was a real situation.
A natural 20 on a turn undead, really just at the absolute perfect time.
Yeah, that was great. And I'm remiss here. I got to mention it. The only thing that really went wrong in the whole thing was there was this person playing a roustabout, and they had found this beautifully crafted chair. And the player, I happen to know, is really taking a liking to woodworking. So this beautifully crafted wooden chair, they had lugged it out because they were like, oh, is it value? Oh, the thief is telling you, indeed, this chair has substantial monetary value. You would want to bring this home. And at the end of the session,
this guy, this player would probably drop a lot of things to carry this chair.
Yeah, it was, I got to carry a torch, but I'm tying this chair to my back. And there was a whole cunning ruse and a misdirection, and I'm going to pretend I'm this guy. And all of it was so that when they run out, I can WWE style smash them in the head with a giant heavy wooden chair.
And I missed.
And
I missed.
You missed twice.
I missed twice. I missed,
It was
I missed
so
a
sad.
I missed a skeleton. I missed the cultist the first time, and then I missed a skeleton the second time. But it was a fitting end for Benjamin. But but okay. So Jody, I want to get to our sponsor, but I also want to call it like Michael's getting a couple of shout outs. The Roustabout class, which is coming out in the Western Reaches books, was designed almost as far as I can tell, sort of a goof. It's kind of a meme class. I actually think that we would do well as the Shadow Dark community to take it seriously. I mean, it's coming out in a book. You should definitely take it seriously. But I think that in the Roustabout class is some interesting information about how to design a class that is irreverent and that isn't supposed to be powerful in a combat sense. It's supposed to be a jumping off point for like interesting and fun creative energy. And so I don't want to say too much about it, but I really enjoyed playing a Roustabout. I was a level 4. You let me roll up a level 4 Roustabout. So I actually had some like hit points to my name. And, Roustabouts may not last to level 4 normally, but if they do, I can say from my experience that it provided a genuinely fun dynamic at the table in terms of a party composition of like, who the heck is this guy? But that plus my background plus a bunch of other stuff, I was able to like roll up a pretty fun and interesting character. So I really enjoyed it. It was a fun time. And, shout out to Michael for making two elements that you used and I used in this session. I would be remiss though if I didn't ask you, if this is the penultimate room, did we not see the actual room?
Did I? No, I just used the word wrong.
I'm leaving that in.
The best.
Pentultimate is the one before the ultimate. It's
I just used it wrong.
I've been waiting this whole time. It's like, Jody, you didn't tell us that we missed a room.
No, I always thought it was the ultimate of the ultimates. I'm just wrong.
The penultimate is the one that were before the end.
I'm going to keep talking, so you have to keep
all right, so you're now we're keeping all this in. We're going to go to our sponsor break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to close out the show. Dungeon Master Diaries is brought to you by OrdVPN. In Shadowdark, knowledge is power, and your greatest weapon is staying unseen in the darkness. Whether you're sneaking past ancient wards or evading a rival's scrying crystal, keeping your whereabouts hidden can mean the difference between life and an untimely death. And that is where OrdVPN comes in. With OrdVPN's patented anti-scrying veil, you can cloak your true location and keep it secret from even the most powerful diviners. No wizard's orb, enchanted mirrors, or rival guilds' prying eyes will know where you are or where you have been. Now, OrdVPN is having a one-time sale just for listeners of this podcast. If you use the secret code Hidden Realm, you can receive 3 bonus moons. Not months, Jody. These are moons. We track the phases of the moons in the Ordverse. And when you sign up, you can get 3 bonus moons out of a 12-moon plan. And Jody, I know that you have been using OrdVPN, and it has made it, first of all, very difficult to find you during the day when I need to get a hold of you. But also, it has some additional qualities that you feel have been quite useful in your day-to-day life outside the context of the dungeon. Why don't you extol the virtues of OrdVPN here and why people should use the secret code Hidden Realm?
Have you ever heard of selective hearing? Have you ever heard of the ability to just not care? You know what's even better? If they can't find you. Take out the garbage. Wait, where did he go? Hey, oil needs to be changed. Where'd he go? That lawn is really... Babe, are you there? It's changed, game changer. Telling you, never had more free time in my life.
Jody, I'm noticing that a lot of these products are used. Never mind. So Cloak your path, confound their gaze, get OrdVPN today. A great sponsor of the show. Thank you, OrdVPN. All right, Jody, let us bring this topic into the light with our core takeaways. You start. What do you got?
All right. If you're going to convert an old school module, BX, AD&D, whatever it may be, and you should, I do recommend it. Well, I was critical, and it will be happily. You can at me at this one. I would love to have this debate about the Caves of Chaos. I really recommend you give these a try. They're a lot of fun. Shadowdark ports beautifully to them. However, really think about what you're going to do with the money and the treasure in them. It is the biggest discrepancy. It was a core component of how those old games work, and it does not align to the internal economy of Shadowdark. Everything else is pretty plug and play. The treasure and money, not so much. So check that out. But if you're converting stuff, at me also. I want to know.
So my first takeaway is that nostalgia is a hell of a drug. I really appreciated being able to be a player at the table and feel like I was taking part in a tradition, a sort of rite of passage, if you will, that I was not afforded as a young gamer. So run these old modules, go find stuff, go pilfer from them, and also use them as an opportunity to bring your players back into the past and play through some of the like anthropological history of D&D. It's fun. It can be, like you said, a little bit frustrating to deal with some of the stuff that doesn't necessarily, the layout and stuff like that doesn't comport well with modern standards, but nostalgia will get you actually pretty far. At least it has, I think, with both of us.
Absolutely. I'm a sucker for it. As you said, a hell of a drug. My last takeaway is this, and this is something I could have probably done a whole episode just on this concept, and maybe someday we will. The thing I learned from the Caves of Chaos that it has a lot of value is considering how does one room affect the next in the dungeon? What is the interconnected nature of the dungeon and the denizens that live in this space? How or do they interact? Because the way the Caves of Chaos are laid out almost begs, and at times it does occasionally call out of like, this guard will run down to this room and do X, Y, and Z. Well, what about when you go into the room with the children, or don't do that? But what happens when you take that guy out? What's the other rooms? What's the noise effect? It's a really interesting problem that isn't something I see in modern modules much, and these old modules really ask you to think about it, and it's a good thought space.
Indeed it is, Jody. And my last one is that I just think that people should prep set-piece encounters. I know that this is coming from the guy who loves random encounters and loves kind of rolling stuff up at the table, but a good set-piece encounter they're just fun. They're fun to design, and I know that it feels sometimes like that goes against the ethos of Shadowdark, which doesn't want you to like prep a lot beforehand and do I think that even GMs that don't feel like prepping an encounter prior with all the bells and whistles and all of the kinds of no pun intended, but I suppose I kind of hit something there. I maybe struck a chord, if you will. Sorry. The set piece encounter is actually it is a GM skill. And I think in Shadowdark, it is possible to do it even with the preponderance of spells that can end an encounter, sleep, web, etc. Like, it is possible to do it in a way that is gratifying for the players. It is fun, and it also avoids some of the pitfalls of a large set piece encounter, like in 5th edition. That really the detriment there is just time. You can really do a great beginning, middle, and end fight in a reasonable amount of time. You had 6 players at the table. I don't think anybody ever felt like things were really kind of grinding to a halt.
All right, friends, as the torchlight grows dim, we hope you're able to find something useful in this episode that you can take into one of your future games. If you have any questions or unique experiences from your table that you'd like us to discuss in a future episode, you can email us at dmdiariespod@gmail.com. You can also reach out to us via YouTube or Facebook, or best of all, get at us on the Dungeon Master Diaries thread on the Shadowdark Discord channel. You can find links to those feeds or any of the other materials we referenced in this episode, there were a bunch, in our show notes. Until next time, I hope to find you in the caves of chaos.
Dungeon Master Diaries is a production of the Stingbat Radio Network. It is produced by Jody Kropholler and edited by Matt Bruner. Our intro and outro music is composed by Christian Schuster. Dungeon Master Diaries is an independent production, is not affiliated with the Arcane Library LLC RPG. It's the Shadow Dark RPG, Matt. It's produced by, it's a product of the Arcane Library and is copyright 2023. Oh my God, it's the worst one yet!
It wasn't me.